Hey everybody. Never done, let's see. Yep, microphone's working. Never done a live video before on the podcast setup, but I think there's something that's really interesting going on, and people seem to really like watching these when we've done a few shorts of the videos. And the last time I talked about Conor McGregor at 170 pounds, I kind of ranted about that. Well, now it kind of seems like we have another dynamic happening at 175 pounds that I think is really interested. And I just kind of wanted to get out there now while it's on my head and it's fresh. I think that there's something happening at the 170-pound weight division that's pretty unique to this time period and something the UFC has never seen before. The two best welterweights on the planet are Colby Covington and obviously the champ, Kamaru Usman. I have no doubt about that. Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington had an all-time great fight. They went into the fifth round. One judge had it 3-1 Colby, another judge had it 2-2, and the other judge had it 3-1 Kamaru. And then Kamaru Usman got the finish. I mean, what more could you ask for? It was a war that ended decisively, no judge's decision. It was awesome. But there's not a ton of hype, I don't feel like, to see Kamaru fight again. And I don't see a ton of hype right now around Colby Covington. Like Colby's even been relatively quiet, and you kind of have to be a little bit, right? Because ate a little bit of humble pie, losing the way that he did against Kamaru, getting knocked out essentially, reported broken jaw, but he's been a lot quieter. The three biggest stars at the welterweight division right now, obviously, is Jorge Masvidal, who is rumored to fight Kamaru Usman, but now that's on hold for some reason because Dana White says we're working on something else. Okay, that's weird. The other one is Nate Diaz, who Jorge beat, but his name's always out there, even though he could take a 3-year layoff like he did, and then his name's just always out there to fight somebody. And then lastly, everybody's favorite, or love him or hate him, Conor McGregor, right? Talked about it. He's been doing some fights at 170. He's talked about winning the 170 title. I don't think that's super realistic with Kamaru there. I think Kamaru's just way too big for him and could just wrestle the crap out of him, and just it's not something I'm interested in. But everybody wants some sort of trio with those three. What's everybody talking about? Conor Masvidal. What's everybody talking about? Maybe it's Conor Nate 3 this summer. Why Khabib and Justin Gaethje figure out the 155 division? Why isn't the urgency to figure out who's Kamaru Usman's next opponent? Who's Colby Covington's next opponent? It almost feels like to me they're pushed to the side while everybody's trying to figure out what Jorge's going to do, and supposedly it's not for the 170 belt. Weird. What's Nate Diaz going to do? And what makes Nate Diaz interesting is he just popped up. Jorge Masvidal just popped up today and tweeted out at him. Here, I'll read the tweet. Let's run it back. Hashtag the resurrection and still. Well, and still, he's referring to his BMF title. Run it back. He's talking about running it back with Nate Diaz. Is Jorge Masvidal would rather defend his BMF title with Nate Diaz against Nate Diaz than fight Usman for the 170 belt? It's like the BMF title is becoming more important, and those names that are attached to it is more important than the actual 170-pound weight class belt. I don't know if that's good for business for the UFC, but they kind of created the monster, right? They made this fight. I suggested that Conor has been looking for fights at 170 to try and prepare himself to decisively be able to beat Nate Diaz in the trilogy. Biggest trilogy in UFC history. He's going to fight Nate Diaz, and he wants to make sure he can knock him out. He talked about not using his energy efficiently in the first fight. In the second fight, he probably used it a little bit, too conservative. He gets made fun of a lot for running in that fight and conserving his energy. I mean, Nate Diaz pointed and laughed at him in the cage. So, I mean, I think Conor wants to go out there and he wants to sleep Nate Diaz. It's the biggest fight in UFC history. It'll be the biggest fight in UFC history. Conor Nate 3. It's incredible. Nate coming off a loss, it'll still be the biggest fight because that's what everybody wants to see. Nate Diaz isn't dumb, despite what many people may think. The Diaz brothers are not dumb. They're very smart and they know what they're worth. They want to fight, but they want what they feel like they're worth. And they're worth a lot. They're worth a payday because people tune in to see them. I think the UFC is trying to make Nate versus Conor 3. And I think Nate is saying, nope, let me have my rematch with Jorge first. Then we'll do Nate Conor 3. That's the only thing that makes sense to me of why Nate Diaz. It's the only thing that makes sense to me of why Nate Diaz would be entertaining that Jorge rematch right now. He wants the rematch. He felt like it was a bad doctor stoppage, whatever. He felt like he was coming on in the 4th and 5th round and that Jorge was slowing down. I mean, you can think whatever you want. It's fine. But the reality is the UFC is kind of at Nate Diaz's mercy if they want to make that fight. And I think Nate could be leveraging his Jorge rematch because if he can, in his mind, he probably thinks he can beat Jorge. If he can beat Jorge Masvidal and win the BMF title and take that into the trilogy fight with Conor McGregor, makes it even bigger. And the payday just gets bigger. And it's really interesting and it's really fun. Why everything's getting figured out with Gaethje, Khabib up there. All this stuff is happening at 170. And all the noise right now is pretty much on Conor, Jorge, and Nate. They even threw out, somebody even reported that Conor had the contract offer on his desk to fight Kamaru Usman right now. It's crazy. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. We have this, but we finally got Dustin Poirier fight, who we thought maybe Conor was going to be Conor's next opponent. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. And then we're going to go ahead and jump right into Conor's next fight. I think is Jorge or Nate Diaz at 175 pounds. That's what I think is going to happen. And I'm looking forward to it because I'll sign me up for any of them. And no matter who you think is going to win any of those fights or whatever, Jorge's going to win. Beat too big for Conor. Jorge's going to just smash Diaz again. Diaz wins in the trilogy. Conor wins in the trilogy. Whoever, however, whatever. At the end of the day, it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, Dana White. We're so grateful for the fights are back. Thanks for all the support, you guys. We appreciate you. I'm out.